This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It is 10:09 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast, and you're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And it is a beautiful Friday morning.
It is, yep.
One of the interesting pieces that I had this morning was actually trying to get one of my little hounds to bring himself back into the house. He was having so much fun looking at everything.
Well, yeah, and, you know, it's just a matter, 5 degrees makes a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
It really does.
I guess especially when you're wearing a fur coat.
There you go.
You know, there's that small detail. You know.
Oh, well, I love the headline in the Los Angeles Times today that, you know, there are 2 Florida teams.
Okay.
In Los Angeles. One's playing the Angels, others playing the Dodgers. And they are going to get hit with Hurricane Hillary. The first hurricane to hit California since 1939. And they blamed it on the 2 Florida teams.
Yeah, 2 Florida teams come in, so of course they've got hurricanes. Yep.
They made them feel at home.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, weather, and it's getting active in off Africa too. So yeah, we're that time of year.
Yeah, it is. It's hurricane season, folks. Take it seriously.
Mid-August to October, and they start tailing off then. But don't let your guard down.
Yeah, don't let your guard down.
No.
We've been whipped by late.
Yes, we have.
Late season ones.
Yep. So how was your week?
So my week has been full. Classes started at IRSC.
Yep.
And a new semester and term, the fall semester, and the A term, Kaiser does ABCD, starts on not this Monday, but next Monday.
Oh, okay.
So we've got one more week, and the next semester starts there. Right now they're finishing up summer.
There you go.
So,
okay.
And congratulations to all those who are completing their degrees. I know some nurses are getting pinned.
Nice.
So some fun things. Yeah, I was helping them play with, they give out a lamp to the graduates, a little.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's like an Aladdin's lamp thing with a candle in it. Kind of cool.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Well,
and IRSC last week
just opened their new nursing, right? So then more nurses in there.
Oh, we need them.
And I'll tell you, I've got 4 classes at IRSC, and they're all full. So IRSC is busy.
Good. Well, and I know that Dr. Moore was putting all of his marbles in the Promise program, but it's working.
It is. I've mentioned it other times. Students need extra help now coming out of our public schools than they did 10 or 20 years ago. We have a very different student body coming out of the schools. Mm-hmm. And there's a number of reasons for that, but they're not college prepared.
Well, and you go back 3 or 4 years. What did we have? COVID.
Yeah. That had an impact.
Major disruptor.
Major disruptor. It's going to be a generation until that works its way out.
I was reading something on one of the ESPN pages. That Boston College, that the Jesuits there are really complaining that they have now got to just elementary, basically reading and writing and arithmetic, have those classes as well, even at a very strict academic school. But they've almost go back to the basics.
When COVID hit, bunch of things happened. We talk about trauma. In fact, the book that Dr. Strahan and I just published rather. Well, we wrote it too, but we wrote it well before it was published. It took a while to get it on paper. But one of the things that it talks about is COVID trauma. COVID, the pandemic, the shutdown, was traumatic in many ways. Aside from the really obvious fear of, am I going to catch COVID, which was, for many people, phobic, because they went over the top, because they didn't understand how it was transmitted. They really don't understand. A lot of people still don't understand what a virus is. Very simply, a virus is a bit of genetic material. It's not even really alive, but it has a way of hooking in and getting into your cells. It doesn't have life in the way that we think of like bacteria. That's why they're so small, because they're not really even a cell. They're parts of a cell. And it's this little mutant rogue piece of DNA that gets in and hijacks your own cells to force your cells to reproduce it instead of what they need to reproduce.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and it's the fighting of that goes on internally between it and your immune system that contributes to part of the problem. And part of the, so it's this whole big piece, but it's not. Viruses are much more insidious than bacteria. Antibiotics work well on bacteria, but they don't work on viruses because viruses are not the same kind of alive.
Okay.
So you have to do something, right? And that's the challenge with an antiviral, something that kills viruses, because they're not really alive. So you've got to get something that gets in and disrupts that bit of genetic material without damaging your cells, because it doesn't pay to make you sicker in order to fight the disease.
Right.
And so mostly what the vaccines do is they give it, they basically train your immune system how to fight off this virus, how to conquer it. That's what the vaccine does. It's a learning thing in your body at a cellular level.
Interesting.
So it's a little different. And the fear was, how do you get the virus? And that's part of why just a momentary exposure to it was not enough to catch it. You had to have been in enough contact with enough material to hit a critical point where it could actually hijack your body.
Yeah.
And so it takes a while, but we don't realize how much we spread stuff in our daily lives if we don't wash our hands, if we touch our, hopefully kids have been taught this as young children, but I don't think so. People today still don't do enough washing, even after COVID, and I'm not suggesting that you get to the place where you wash your hands until you get raw or every 5 minutes. That's called scrupulosity, and that's not a healthy behavior.
Wait a minute, what did you just say?
Yeah, it's over.
Scrupulosity?
Yeah.
I've never heard that word.
It's too much cleansing and often that's for fear of germs or something else.
Okay.
But so it can become a compulsive behavior for people.
Wow. Yeah, well, it seems like one of our folks in Stewart just had COVID, I think, for the third time this week. So, I had to do a little subbing down there in Stewart in the afternoon. But, it's out there.
It is still out there.
It hasn't left.
It hasn't left, although it's not as deadly.
Correct. Whatever this strain is not as
I'm not sure that it's the strain that's so different as it is that our bodies are now so much more effective. It's been around, and those who have vaccines, their immune systems are like, okay, but I understand a new vaccine is going to be out very shortly, and I highly recommend. It's not a mind control device, folks. It really is to teach your cells how to fight COVID. And I think that's just something we need. It's interesting to me that the flu went way down. The flu virus.
I noticed that.
Because people were practicing better antiviral behaviors.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Right. So that 6 foot distance, particularly if you weren't feeling well, the stay at home if you tested positive, all of those things stopped the flu along with with COVID. They're both viruses. They're just two different versions of viruses, two different sets.
So you think the vaccines work then?
I believe that they do.
And we both have had
We
them,
both
yeah.
have had them. We were talking about it when I got the call, and I rushed and called some friends, and they came along with us because you could make up to 4 appointments. So I was quick about that.
Yeah, and you went to the Fenn Center.
I went to
right?
the Fenn Center.
Yeah, so did we. It
And
was very quick.
Yeah, I was impressed by how they handled it, how wonderfully that was done, and how effective the nurses and everybody else who actually administered the vaccines. Talk about those folks are heroes.
They are.
Right? They were in a room with potentially infected people, right, for hours.
Yeah, days.
Days, yeah.
In their case.
Repeatedly for hours.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So there are ways to not get sick. And so, I mean, health workers eventually pick up some immunities just from being exposed to it, because if you're exposed in small doses, then your body learns. It's when you get hit with a megadose that it's overwhelming, if it hasn't learned what to do.
Intriguing. Yeah.
So there's many things going on, but the other part of that was the shutdown. So there's many different segments in our population. Some people lost their jobs, or at least temporarily, and some permanently. Others still had to work and go out into that stuff. And, of course, there were immunocompromised people who were fighting off cancer and other various diseases. And so there was this tremendous shutdown and fear. And it didn't last just a week or two. It lasted, for the most part, 3 years.
Sure, you bet.
It took until late 2022 till things were starting to get back to normal. And, hopefully we've gotten to the place now where we don't ridicule somebody who's wearing a mask because they're coughing and sneezing or not feeling well. And if they have to come out because you're the only person and you have to buy groceries. Fortunately, we now have things like curbside delivery. We really have picked up some good behaviors or some good techniques out of that. The big thing that I'm noticing is that all of the plexiglass dividers are coming down. Even the ones at Kaiser are coming down.
The bank that we go to here in Fort Pierce still has them up.
Some people do.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a while.
I think so. Oh, yeah, there's no doubt in my mind.
It depends on, bank tellers, of course, are at high risk because they're handling something that somebody handled. The hands-free paying is certainly reduced mugging and things like that, and will continue to. The use of credit cards has cut that down.
There is a commercial on, you talk about hands-free paying, on one of our shows that talks about the federal government wants to get rid of money.
Always has. Ever since we started printing it.
Really?
It's a pain.
Okay. They just want to go to cashless.
Yeah. Well, because that gets rid of the underground cash, too.
Okay.
But that's okay. It'll happen that there'll be some kind of electronic counterculture money that'll be traded too.
Oh, I'm sure.
It just is, that's kind of, there aren't too many people who pay for things in cash anymore. It's much smaller. Much smaller. Small shows, I'm thinking of food trucks and craft shows and things like that, where you've got what I would call small vendors.
Well, even in the sports vein here, the St. Lucie Mets are cashless now.
Yeah, a lot of places are. It reduces the risk of burglary. I should say it changes it to a cybercrime.
Yeah.
Right. So people are stealing a different way, and even the criminals are having to get smarter. They're having to get a little bit tech smarter.
One of our clients here at the station, two of the last 3 months, he's had his ID whacked.
I've been the victim of identity theft. It's not fun.
No, and and of course, we his credit card once a month, and it's like, what in the world's going on? And he just said it happened again.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my goodness.
Now there's
It's
a couple.
awful.
There's a couple of places where it's really likely to happen. Gas stations, interestingly, are a major problem because they put the readers.
Oh, the fake readers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I've seen news stories on that.
Yeah.
And we've actually had a couple of those instances in St. Lucie County as well. You bet.
Yeah, it's everywhere, and it's just the more isolated the pump, the more likely it is that somebody's going to stop. It doesn't take them but a few seconds to whip the extra reader into the system, and they do it somewhere where it's not easy for the folks in the office to see it, or they do something distracting so people don't pay attention.
Yeah. Wow.
It's cybercrime is definitely on the rise and will continue to be, and that's just part of life. But back to COVID, the end up of 3 years of let's go to school, let's not go to school, let's do it online, let's go to school, let's do half of it, let's do this, let's do that, taught the kids inadvertently that I don't have to go to school. And because their parents were distracted with other things of COVID and were not skilled teachers, then the extra stuff, coupled with the many tools online that kids can find, that students can find, that do their homework for them, they don't realize that the person who's being hurt is them. And so we have a group of students coming up who are very skilled at finding the answers but not learning them.
Oh, retention.
They're not even reading them. It's not even penetrating. It's just a cut and paste.
Oh God.
And
a cut and paste society.
well, we've got it. I mean, I just did a term paper for somebody, and it's like, get rid of these extra characters that you pulled out of ChatGPT or some other AI.
Oh no.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah. It's not helping you with this paper. And there is something interesting, and this is something I'm going to warn students about. Beware of it. At the very least, you need to track down the citations and references in your documents, because the AIs don't find the real thing. We call them hallucinations. You go and you track them, and they're not really there, or they're wrong in some fundamental way.
Artificial not so intelligent?
Yeah. It's an algorithm, and so it looks for an answer whether there's one there or not. And the AIs don't have access, and I'm not sure why, but they don't have access to current information. So, for example, ChatGPT, if you ask it, when was your latest knowledge update, and it will tell you it was September of 21.
Oh, wow.
So it doesn't have anything that happened after that in great detail.
Well, we're lucky because nothing's happened since then.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know
So
that.
well, I'm guessing that's by some design, or maybe it's the way the algorithm works and what it can cruise and find. But it's not finding academic sources. It doesn't get there. And when I had a student turn this paper that I was talking about. I always track back every reference in every paper. And this one, the name on the author was wrong. The year of publication was wrong. The volume and issue number of the journal was wrong.
Oh, no.
And, there was an article of a similar title to a person whose middle name was what was used in the false citation.
Wow.
So it's just this kind of almost scholarship.
Unbelievable. Wow.
And the piece that gets me is the thinking you can pass this off. We just had our faculty meeting at IRSC on Zoom, which is one of the gifts of COVID. Thank you. We don't have to.
No, it is.
We don't all have to pile into McAlpin, which is nice. It's that much less gas.
Beautiful theater.
It is a beautiful theater, and I love going there, and I always will go there for shows as long as I can. But be that as it may, and in the modern renovations that they did a couple of years back, but to not have to go there for a faculty meeting is wonderful. To be able to break out into your Zoom room, those are wonderful things. Because we went to the all adjuncts, and then we went to our division, which for me is liberal arts, and then we broke out into specific subjects of what you're teaching this year. So the philosophy teachers went to one group, the psychology to another, and I'm not teaching psychology this term, so I didn't go there. I went to the philosophy one. Things like that. So there were 3 different groups in the course of an hour and a half.
Wow. Oh, by the way,
2 hours.
Kara Perry was here, one of the VPs at Florida Atlantic. There are over 30,000 students now.
Wow.
It's, you just think of that as being a very small school, but yeah, and the largest freshman class in their history.
Yeah. Well, the same is true with IRSC.
You bet. You
It's
bet.
their largest. Kaiser's on the rise too, so students are going to school, and that's a good thing. But we are having to do more. This is how you submit a document. This is how you open Word and use it. This is how you open Excel and use it. There are so many wonderful tools out there. Our kids are tech dependent, but they're not tech savvy.
Well, yeah, I get that.
They need these crutches, but they're not always savvy on how to use them. They're very savvy about AI because it's out there. It's the hot thing. It created a buzz, and hey, and the ones who are really lazy and just cut and paste it are getting caught.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because in the end, that is still a lack of integrity. It's not directly copying, but it is copying AI's output, and you didn't make that. So it is still taking somebody else's work and claiming it for your own. So it is actually plagiarism, even though we're not calling it that.
Yeah. Question about your classes.
Yeah.
Women versus men. How many women?
There are more women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Kara said that yesterday about FAU. Same thing.
It's true throughout the United States. More women are in school than men, and I think part of that is the trades. The trades are still heavily male, and to a young boy, the idea of going out and earning some real money is very attractive, and so they go into some of the better paid trades. And they don't go back and finish school, and they don't have some of the pieces. So, for example, I teach philosophy. It's a humanities, it's a liberal arts course.
Mm-hmm.
And you ask the question of why does a mechanical engineer need philosophy? Because they don't think they're ever going to use it. But the reality is they're going to use it every day. Philosophy is about how do you find the truth? How do you seek the correct answer? How do you move ethically? How do you make conscious decisions in your life? There are life skills. It's not about whether or not Socrates had a beard, which is an interesting old philosophical debate. Because, of course, if you can't grow a beard, you can't be a good philosopher. A little bit of sexism.
Huh? Wait a minute, back up. Oh.
That was actually an ancient conspiracy theory.
No.
Put out by somebody who hated Socrates, that he couldn't grow a beard. He pretended to grow a beard because in those days people weren't clean shaven. If you look through the photos of American presidents, you will see when it becomes easy for them to shave by the cleaner faces.
When Gillette came into play.
Yeah, all of those things. Safety razors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Little details.
Yeah.
Because now we think most people have clean clean faces, not everybody.
But it's funny you say about possibly why am I taking this course? I'll never use it. And I that was me at Loyola. What in the world am I taking this course? And I remember my prof saying, "You never know when you're going to need it, because you will need it."
Yeah.
and, and he was right.
And that's the reason why the get the answer on AI and copy it in and present it as my work, the look up the answers on Quizlet and present it as my own work is not helpful, because nothing is going between the ears and sticking. It's not even reaching the ears or the eyes, other than to see, there's text, copy it. When you do that, then we're going to see things like low final exam scores. We're going to see a rise in test anxiety, because of course you're not ready to be tested. You don't know the material.
Right.
So the one who really, yes, you may get a passing score. You might even get an A in the course, because professors are inherently generous, actually, in grading. We try to give the benefit of the doubt. It's getting harder with all of these things, but we do try to do that, and so students tend to squeak by. But someday you're not going to have the skill set that you need, and then you're going to try to cover that. You might cover it with bluster and with anger. So I think we're going to see a rise in anger as these students who cheat more and more go out into the world and know less and less.
Ooh. Wow, that's a scary thought.
Knowledge is amazing. Knowledge is a tremendous tool. And it's worth noting that I thought of it because President Biden is hosting the summit with Japan and Korea, who both do amazing jobs of educating their young. Their scores on math competency and even English competency are scary compared to the U.S. Their literacy rates are very, very high, and they're multilingual.
Oh, yeah.
They're not just learning their own language, they're learning English, and they're learning probably Chinese, I'm sure.
There was a prof at UCLA, I saw this story, and he was saying that the Chinese students at UCLA this year are more proficient in English than
the American students.
Some of the Americans.
Well, some of those students might even be ones that I taught.
Oh, no.
Seriously, because the VIP kids that did a lot of the, you know that I taught English online for during COVID, right? It was the big way that I survived. And they were very interested, and we had to correct the students to a Midwest accent.
Wow.
So not only was it learning English, but it was learning slang. Right? They called it figurative speech, but it was slang. And
wow.
Yeah. And with a Midwestern accent, so that in fact they understand the importance of language much more than we do. Much more than we do. At the very least, I think Americans should become proficient in both English and Spanish, because those are both dominant languages in our country, and something else.
And apparently our grades, America has fallen out of the top 20 in industrialized countries. I'm thinking, what?
Yeah.
Really?
We have taught our students not to think. When they come, that's one of the skills that they come into my philosophy class as a rule without. They don't have critical thinking. And that's throughout. It doesn't matter who I'm teaching, where I'm teaching. I'm finding that kids just don't have the real ability. So, for example, one of the things that, and I love watching the dumbfounded look, the aha moment as this penetrates. When I say to somebody, have you ever talked to somebody in a different time zone? Or have you ever talked to somebody in a different latitude? Like maybe you've got family up in New York or Pennsylvania or New Jersey or Delaware, and you say something like, well, it's dark outside, and they say, no, it's not,
Yes.
because it's not. And, nightfall is not the same in Port St. Lucie as it is in Tampa.
Yep.
The sun sets at different times. And so we can both be right with a different answer. I can say it's dark outside, and you might very accurately say, no, it's not. It's still bright.
Hey, we had a midnight baseball tournament in Alaska.
Oh, of course.
It stays light there, very late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can remember somebody who lived in Alaska saying to me that when they first moved there, their neighbor said, you see this window? You will see the sun rise and set in this window.
Oh.
Yeah, because all depends on latitude. And life is very different when it's so dramatically different. We don't think of it much in Florida because our days are a little bit longer in summer and a little bit slower or a little bit shorter in winter. But up north, those are dramatic changes.
Pretty radical, yeah.
Yeah, I can remember coming home from school and getting dark, right, having to rush to get in the house so that I wasn't stuck outside in the dark.
Sure. And, in that area of the world where you grew up, I mean, you're also fighting weather, because come wintertime, there's no telling what's going to happen.
And again, they see it in schools there that kids don't come back as quickly after a snow day. So as soon as we give the kids the option of staying home, they don't come back to school as quickly and as readily. A couple of reasons. One, there's whatever's going on at school. It might be a test, it might be work, it might be having to learn something. Because learning, until you learn to enjoy learning, is difficult. You have to exert calories. You have to do something to learn something most of the time. I mean, some learning we get instantly and organically, but to learn your basic math, your spelling, your English, those things take effort. Kids are very absorptive, and it's easier on them than it is on adults. But it's kind of interesting. For my licensing, I had to do an interesting paper. I thought this one was really kind of cool, which was to discuss the things that my family and I did as I was growing up and how they related to the different development theories.
Oh, wow.
And
that would be interesting.
It was very interesting. It was a long paper, but
how long is long?
10 pages.
Oh, that's not. Yeah, okay.
That's enough to get your attention. I actually could have written about 14 or 15 to really go into some of the details, but part of that's to pick and choose and see what to put in and what not to.
And your parents obviously pushed education.
My parents clearly did. The standard Jewish joke is that the fetus is viable when it graduates from graduate school.
Becomes a doctor.
Yeah. And the truth is that I always knew I'd go to graduate school at some level. I mean, I got a master's early, but going back to school was not something that was difficult for me. The Chinese didn't understand it. When I talked to them about going back to school, their thing was, well, you're done. School is something you do when you finish, because they don't go back to school, because it's paid for by the state, so there's no way for somebody to go back to school.
Okay. Huh. Interesting.
It's an interesting little cultural piece. So it was hard for them to understand somebody going back to school and doing something, because I would talk to them about being a student while I was teaching them, which really blew their minds.
It seems like bullying has become such a big thing in schools now.
Everywhere. It always has been.
Okay.
I think that we're talking more about it, and I think that the cyber stalking element is just I think that adults are playing catch-up because we're not aware. We think the kids are just playing on the internet. They're not. They're being very, very mean. Kids are mean. They haven't really learned empathy. Very few children are empathetic. I mean, it's ironic because that's one of the things that came out of my paper was that one of the stories that my parents told me was that when they would read to me, Little Bo Peep has lost her sheep, I would start screaming and crying because her sheep are lost.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't know where they are, and she's got to be devastated. And they would have to stop the nursery rhyme to promise me they would go help her find him. And they eventually learned not to tell me that nursery rhyme. But yeah.
That's amazing.
So
Okay.
yeah, that was one of my weirdnesses. The other thing that my parents did very consciously for me, and I am so grateful, my parents were not native English speakers. My mother's first language was German, and my father's was Yiddish and Hungarian. So they spoke English together, but they wanted me to be proficient in English. And so what they did, my father loved to go for rides. He loved to drive in the countryside and just find out-of-the-way places. And, of course, with a small kid in the back seat, what are you going to do? They didn't have a tablet to throw at me or a phone. So to keep me entertained in the back, my father and mother would give me words to spell, and I had to tell them what the word meant. I had to spell it and
nice.
then use it in a sentence.
Nice, yeah.
So they really forced me to develop some language skills, and of course the words got more and more complex as I got older. The other thing that my parents did, particularly my father, not so much my mother, but my father, he would say, okay, take 3, multiply it by 2, add 2, divide it by, and he would just keep doing this, and he would say, okay, what number do you have?
All these math problems.
All these math problems. So I came out of my childhood, I came into school with my addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division memorized.
Nice.
I never had to sit and memorize the table because I just knew it. I knew it from doing these math problems in my head. And I don't know, I don't remember the beginning of him telling me 2 + 2 is 4. I can remember counting things and dividing them up on the table. And that's because my father had a psychology degree way back when, so I'm sure he wanted his kid to have that little head start, if you will. And when I went back and wrote this paper, I thought about that, and that's when it's, because you grow up and you think that what your parents do is just what every parent does, and it's just normal. And when I look back now, I realize how unique and special that gift was from them, and that was a conscious thing, and probably because of his training.
And I think your parents would be very proud at what you've become, too.
I hope so. I
would think so. I mean, you're so versatile. It's amazing with everything you've done.
Yeah, well, still got work to do. Still got lots of work to do.
Back to school.
I am back to school. Class at Liberty starts on Monday.
Oh, no.
Yeah, right now is a really tough I'm finished. I've done everything. All my classes are done. I'm just waiting for the final grades to show up. And I'm chuckling at some of the comments from the professors. So some of them will say, your writing is pretty precise. I'm sure they're wondering if I'm using AI. Yeah, so I mean, in some ways it is easier for me because I know what I want to say. I just have to figure out how to put it in the paper and find my articles to support it. But it's the back ways of doing it. And I'm also checking out new research and seeing if it's seeing something different or anything like that. So I spend a lot of energy in that, which is different from what the student who's coming up who doesn't have the psych background. But be that as it may, the new courses are up there. I can see them on my dashboard, but I can't do anything in them yet.
Yeah.
Because they don't open until Monday.
Oh, okay. So now, how much longer do you have at Liberty?
About a little over a year.
Okay.
So, a couple of things that I am doing. I have applied to the state of Florida to become a registered intern.
Nice.
And just put that paperwork in. And so I'm going to give a shout out locally to Eric Lever of Change Your Mind. I'll be working in his office some.
Great. And what is he now?
He is a licensed mental health counselor,
Okay.
and his office is in St. Lucie West. It's I love this kind of reference. It's behind where the Publix used to be. So it's off of Bethany.
Yep.
That set of offices behind.
Right behind the old Publix.
Right behind the old Publix.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that center well. Yeah.
For those at St. Lucie West and Bethany, go north on Bethany and hang a left as soon as you hit that back set of offices, and he's about 2/3 of the way in there. So you can give that office a call, and yeah, I'll be doing some work out of there.
You may run into the rabbi there.
Yeah, you might run into the rabbi, and I'm also going to be offering some telehealth counseling.
Well, you'll have your 8x10s that you could autograph and
Yeah, there you go.
hand out there.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not that big, not that famous.
Let's speak about the book now.
Okay, so that
Yeah.
is hope, strength, and healing for the wounded soul. And it's written by me and Dr. Laurel Strahan. And one of these days I'll get her on the show with me.
Yeah,
She'll
she
come
could
in and
zoom
talk about
in
it.
someday. Yeah.
I mentioned that to her. Right now she's got a bunch of stuff going on with finishing up the term. So
Sure.
we'll get that to happen. It's going to be one of these shows. It'll be a surprise, folks, but she'll be on with me.
That'll be great.
And,
yeah.
So I also want to give a shout out to I've got two supervisors. I've got Eric Lever here in town and Ronit Navon in Tampa. In Orlando, I'm sorry. Who'll be working with me on doing virtual telehealth.
Oh, wow.
So lots of cool things.
Well, they do that virtually, too.
Yeah.
Well,
you
they're
can-
again an
absolutely.
outgrowth of COVID.
Mhm. Absolutely. It was around before, but it's so much more available, and we've learned more about what you have to do things a little bit differently because you're screen to screen rather than. And there was a stuck in there. I heard that.
You pick out things differently when it's 2-dimensional compared to 3.
Yeah, but at least it's live, and at least it's interactive, and that's a big thing. So I'll diverge real quickly to the other thing that I'm seeing and hearing, and that's not just with students, it's with everybody, is that people are not listening. They're not hearing, they're not even seeing. They are simply going off of what they expect.
Mm-hmm.
And right, so it was kind of interesting. My colleague at Kaiser and I were talking to somebody, and she had asked some questions and taken care of something, and she said that her colleague was in the room and had a question as well. Would the person be able to help me? And the woman said, "Sure thing. Glad you had a good session. Bye." Click. To her it was ending, and she was going to the next one, and boom.
See ya.
Yeah, she didn't even hear what we had said, which is just, and we just both stared at each other for a second and looked at the phone. So, yeah, particularly annoying because it was a government agency where you were on hold for an hour. And she'd been on hold for an hour, and I happened to walk by and see, she flagged me in that she had gotten a hold of them because she had some things to do so she could set the phone on the side while she was on hold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah. We have. We're both working on, I had a question about the licensing, and I may not be doing it right, but I've done it. And I'll take care of the other parts and steps, and it'll be what it'll be.
So the interning is a period of how long then?
A minimum of 100 weeks.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's a 2-year, basically.
That's serious.
It's very
Wow.
serious. And it's with good reason. It's to, yes, you have the book knowledge, and yes, I'm a little different because I've it's not therapy, but I've done rabbinic pastoral counseling.
Sure.
Which is different and not different. So I'm a little bit, again, of an odd duck, because I always am.
Well, you've been a chaplain as well.
I've been a chaplain as well, and I have all the chaplaincy training, and I have all of that verbatim training that I so loved at the time. But all of it was valuable. And interesting, I was actually thinking about that on the way in here. Sales training is similar because the best salespeople are listeners.
Yes.
And ask open-ended questions.
Best interviewers are
Best
listeners.
interviewers. Right. So everything in my life has geared me to this. Right. So my journalism background, again, open-ended questions. Let the person control the conversation. Let it go where, get the questions you need answered, and then let it go. Let it go to something interesting, because that's where the good stuff is.
I remember when we were starting at Fox, and they had a nighttime talk show host, Joan Rivers, who never listened to her interviewees. She had cue cards. She worked off the cue cards, and that's the way her show went. And, we used to sit there occasionally down in our Dodger office thinking,
how can she
command the position she's in and
right time,
never
right time at the right place.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. And it was who you knew.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It always is.
Sure.
It always is. Interestingly, though, right, the Han Dynasty required testing, objective testing, to get positions in their government.
Back then?
Back then.
Wow.
2,400 years ago.
That's incredible.
Yeah, beginning of standardized testing. The highest scores could become local government officials, and of those, another group went up and tested again, and then they could become regional and national. So it actually was done on merit. Not that all tests are good, because they're not, but it was an objective measure, yeah. Test anxiety started way back when. There's always been test anxiety, and there always will be, and I have it too. So, yeah, so it's 2 years, and the idea is that that's 2 years that you're working with somebody, keeping an eye on you, somebody that you're checking in with. So I have to meet with the supervisor once a week and spend an hour with them going over my own stuff and making sure it doesn't end up in my hour with my client, but also to, and you let your clients know that you are an intern and you have a supervisor, and that you will be discussing parts of what you discuss with them with your supervisor, but that it still will be held confidential to the three of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important, because you need that extra set of eyes and ears.
So how many clients will you see in a week then?
Depends on what I can fit in my schedule.
I was going to say, wait a minute, you're teaching at 2 colleges.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, well, my class work will cut down once I'm into practicum, which is coming. So, although I'll be studying for my comprehensives, because I've got 3 shots at passing that test, of which only 50% pass.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That low.
Yeah. I thought it would be 2/3. 1/3 new, 1/3 returning, and 1/3 not. But it's only half. So some people give up when they don't pass. But you got 3 shots, so hey. And in the Florida one, you actually can do it more. I know people who've done it. It's like the bar. You can do it as many times as it takes until you get there. And I think that's actually the fair way to do it. Let somebody keep learning and figure out how, because part of it's learning how the test writer thinks. As somebody who writes tests, and I've actually taken classes in writing tests. And most people who write tests either haven't taken that class or did it so long ago they don't remember. So part of it's learning the mindset of the test writers. It just is. And some questions are easier and some are harder. Some are just, like if the question is, what's the 4th word on the 7th page of the blue book? It's a hard question unless you have the blue book handy or happen to be lucky enough to have memorized that page. And those are unfair questions in my mind, because they're not really scholarship. But you find those kinds of things. And I know that those are on those comprehensive exams. So there's things like, what's the third principle of so-and-so's philosophy? And if you're not looking at them in the right order, then you're not thinking them. Yeah. So what's the third word in Shafir's book, you know? No, not a fair question. Not a fair question.
But how do we get the book? Speaking of the book.
The book is available on Amazon, and all you have to do to find it is search trauma and lobb, and it'll come right up. The word trauma is in its subtitles, so that'll come up, and yeah, you'll find it right up there. It's also available on Kindle, so you can get a Kindle. The Kindle price is low right now for introduction. It'll be going up soon, so if you want a Kindle, get on there now. And it will be available in Audible whenever I find the round to it to get that done.
I don't know how you do all you do. Oh, so where can we find the services?
We can find services, and tonight is Third Friday, so it's Shabbat dinner, and that's at 295 South Northeast. I'll get it yet. Prima Vista Boulevard at the corner of Irving. It's in the community center at St. Andrew's Lutheran Church. So please join us. It's the first building at the parking lot.
All right. Have a good week.
You too. Take care, everyone.
This is WPSL, Port St. Lucie.